So you've heard of DDoS, but have you heard of TDoS?
So Kim, I hear you have an article about a denial of service attack.
Yes, Ken. So this is nothing new. It's been around for quite some time. The telephony denial of service, it's different than the distributed denial of service. Well, it's similar, except for you're using telephony instead of, the distributed against computers and so forth, networks and so forth. These attacks have evolved over the years from manual TDoS to automated now using, before it was war dialing, we call it war dial years ago, to now using automated attacks. Before it was manual TDoS attacks. And so now they're using more of an automated attack using different software applications. And these particular services and tools that they've used have been around for a while, and they've been distributed amongst different threat actors, malicious actors, and so forth. I'm not sure if since we've evolved from the old PBXs and using war dialing, and now we have voice over IP, SIP, and so forth. So that's what it's advanced to. But the TDoS is very important because they're attacking the different PSAPs or public safety answering points, where it's call centers for emergency EMTs, firefighters, ambulances, so forth. And they're bombarding the telephone lines and their voice lines. And it's affecting the real calls that must come in for emergencies. And instead, these particular calls are bombarding their systems. And so it's making it so that they're unable to get legitimate calls to go through for emergencies. And some people may die from that. So these particular threat actors are mostly, hacktivists or for financial gain or for harassment of different entities. Sometimes it's for government as well. And they would also call the EMT services or the emergency service systems or those PSAPs, or whether, and they would request money. And if they don't give them the money or don't go to a certain site that they tell them, go to this site so you can, put in your credentials and so forth. If they don't get what they want, then they'll go forward with sending a TDoS attack on these entities. So what the FBI is saying to do is that record who's calling in right after or who's calling right before when this happens, so that they could report it to the FBI IC3 when this happens. But it's very common now, and is becoming more and more common. So we've advanced on telephony DOS attacks. It's funny because so you have certain infrastructures in place, and like networks, they have session border controllers for different networks where they can react to these type of attacks or stop these types of attacks on certain VoIP networks. But some networks don't have this. So those particular networks that don't have session border controllers or anything in place to firewall off their VoIP calls, this happens more frequently than most.
Yeah, so basically it's extortion. So they're extorting emergency services and, the police call in advance, say, hey, we're going to, knock you out, your telephone line's out, unless you send us whatever, 10 Bitcoin or something, which would be an enormous amount of money.
Right.
But in any event, they try to extort them, and then they say, yeah, go away, and they hang up the phone, and then they TDoS them, and they just keep tying the phone line up so that like legitimate emergency services can't get in there.
Right.
Definitely something to be concerned about. Your recommendations are good in terms of recommending people try to basically I would recommend keep a really good audit log. VoIP is really easy to spoof, unfortunately. So I would imagine a lot of times these fraudsters are spoofing their incoming phone number.
They are.
It's not really them. Yeah. So it's going to be hard to backtrack, but you can still do some backtracking, like a savvy internet VoIP sleuth. Like I know one that's on this call here wearing a red jacket could backtrack that somewhat, to at least where it came in from a VoIP perspective, if it was like a third party voice over IP provider and whatnot like that. One other thing, and I'm going to let you talk, Ken, is, beyond emergency services, TDoS has been traditionally very popular in some other spaces that people, especially people with a lot of money, might have become familiar with. So if you're familiar with a lot of the banking sites that you have, a lot of times when you get to log in, they'll say, do you want me to text you a code or do you want me to call you? And they'll have an automated machine call you and read you a code back or something like that.
Right.
So, so what some attackers have done is they opt for that voice one, please call me. And some banks aren't, most are good about this now, but some aren't smart enough to know that if I'm the bad guy and I click have it call me, and then I TDoS the target that I'm supposedly is going to get the phone call, when they call, they just get a busy signal or they get some, goes to voicemail or whatever because their phone line is tied up. And they keep TDOSing that line so that the automated machine can't really get the PIN code through. And then sometimes poorly designed systems allow the attacker through. And there's also some other ones where they actually, especially for very large transactions, the bank will try to call the person directly with a human being and they can't get through. And sometimes they'll let the transaction go because of that as well. So another thing to be wary of as another type of TDoS attack on an individual level that I've definitely seen happen, over the past many years.
I found it really interesting that, just the fact that it's continuing to happen. But as John pointed out, wherever there's an incentive or a method to make money, potentially there's probably a way to, or a reason to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Back there.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so telling because a lot of these threat actors are using these the spoof numbers from legitimate businesses or legitimate government agencies, whether it's FBI, Social Security Administration. They're using these legitimate numbers to call these people or call them from the police department number and so forth. So it's hard for the victim to really know if it's a legitimate call that's coming in or not. And I hate the whole spoofing methods that they use, but that's just so common for them.
Yeah, it's the nature of VoIP, unfortunately. Makes it a little bit trivial to spoof your phone number.
Right, exactly.